Welcome to Never Too Serious with Scott and Dave. I'm Scott.
And I'm Dave.
Space today.
Yeah,
Dave?
I thought I'd talk about all that emptiness inside my head.
Oh, God, this is going to take all day.
It's going to take a long time, maybe right into tomorrow. No, I just keep hearing a lot of, I call it fun because it's intriguing. And a lot of the fun that I'm about to talk about, you know, I could also come up with ideas that could like debunk the fun.
Is this some conspiracy type stuff?
Some of it usually is, but some of it is due to some facts that makes it interesting.
Okay.
So I always hear things about, of course, we've talked about flat Earth, we talked about space, we talked about the moon. So here's an example. Like, let's talk about the moon real quick. So there's conspiracy theorists out there that say that we've never even went to the moon. Mm-hmm. And I gotta tell you, sometimes it makes some sense.
As what would be an example of one of their claims?
Well, like you know, like they talk about how do they get certain things that are there. Like I think this is one that they've discussed, but did they really prove it? I don't know. Like the buggy that's up there, there's the size of a small, like a Honda Civic.
Yeah, the car that you see the astronauts flinging space dust everywhere.
So I've seen a video of how they fold it up and comes out. I'm like, yeah, is that right though? I don't know. It just seems awfully large. And then here's the other thing. Where's all the junk that they brought up there? They didn't bring it back with them.
All the junk.
Well, the car.
Yeah.
Is it still there?
I think it is.
So why can't we see it? Because they didn't go to the dark side of the moon.
So producer E is here. He can look stuff up for us.
Well,
why don't you? I want to see some pictures of that buggy. You said that they said it was foldable.
Right, like it was like a transformer. It came out the side of the craft and it folded out and did all this stuff. I'm like, huh. So there's the buggy.
Okay.
They came out of that craft.
That came out of that lander.
So guys, we were seeing the is that what you call it? The lander?
At the moon lander,
the moon lander. Mm-hmm. And it has this, it's a go-kart size, you know, like one of those what do they call those? Those razors, you know, that they could sell these days. Mm-hmm. But it's not the size of a Civic necessarily, but maybe, you know, it's pretty large. Mm-hmm. And, you know, people are like, well, how did that get up there? Well, pretty sure that lander is pretty full of stuff, not a lot of hollow spaces. You know, if you ever seen the inside, which I have seen some pictures of the inside of those ships to get them there, is very compact and cramped. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's just like, you know, that's a good argument.
Because that's an interesting one. I've not heard that, and I never really even thought about, you know, how did that thing fit onto
Well, if you Google it, you might be able to say, just Google how the buggy fit in. And they showed, now mind you, they didn't show how it came in and out, but they showed, you know, I think it was an animation and how it came in and out.
Gotcha.
So I'm like, well, that's not good enough for me.
Oh.
So, you know, and then the fun part of, well, did they bring it back? Because where are the things that they may have taken there? Because I think it was more cramped on the way back.
My guess is that, they probably did not. Because what would be the point? It was entirely designed to be driven around on the moon.
Right.
Why would you bring it back? In fact, you're going to have all these artifacts to bring back to Earth. I believe that they did bring back a bunch of stuff. So I guess that would make sense. But I am kind of curious on how they. So that's one of the conspiracy things.
That's one of what they utilize to make it seem like it's a conspiracy.
Yeah. Okay. So there's an interesting picture Ethan brought up.
Yeah.
Those of you who are just listening, you can catch the show on YouTube or Rumble or Spotify, and we'll have pictures up for you.
So this actually shows, it looks like they're about ready to insert it into the
lander.
Mm-hmm. So this is one that it was kind of fun to look into because I'm like, ooh, that's kind of a good point. Mm-hmm. And then people have amazing telescopes in their homes these days where they can see a lot of detail on the moon. Pretty sure that they didn't go over to the dark side of the moon. Mm-hmm. And so where in fact is it? Could we be able to see it? Why haven't we seen it? You know? Mm-hmm. You know, and you know, some other topics was also, I don't know if I'm jumping too far here or fast, but they're talking about the moon emits its own light.
Oh, yes. Okay, go ahead.
So that one's one I really can't jump onto because...
Yeah, because the moon is reflecting back from what the sun is providing.
That's what we're told. Wink, wink, huh? So this isn't one that I was really getting into, but I also know that they've had these videos of people getting on the moon, and they found out that these are staged, and they were actually staged. But was this actually footage that they claimed was from the moon?
Mm-hmm.
But damn it looks just like it. It looks like part of it. So, you add that up, you're like, well, what the heck is going on?
Well, and in some of these cases, you're just looking at, you insert a little seed of doubt, and now that thing can grow into something major. Because if you think about like the pictures that you're talking about, or the video that you're talking about, it's like, if some of it was done on a stage, a sound stage, even if it was just for like promotional material, trying to get people excited about it, or actually, I don't know, in some cases testing out equipment or whatever, and if that were used in a documentary to show that this thing actually happened, then I can understand how people could go, oh, but that part wasn't real.
Right. So here's I think where it could make sense to people.
Okay.
We were in a race to space, to the moon. I think Russia was involved. Yep. And so everybody wanted to be first.
Yep.
So the claim kind of is that to be first, we went and we videoed it in a stage,
mm-hmm.
and to show that we were first, we were there.
Mm-hmm. I think I've heard that
possible.
one.
Mm-hmm. There's a reason. And so, there's plenty to other things out there to identify. So here's the other thing, and this is from NASA, I believe, and even Forbes, I think, even touched on it. How come we haven't gone back? Mm-hmm. Well, you look it up a ton of times, they say we've lost the technology.
Oh, I hadn't heard that part.
Well, I believe that was a quote from NASA. You could look it up. I could have it off, but who cares? They're off too. So, and I think it was even Forbes they talk about we've lost the technology. The scientists are obsolete. That I'm like, wait a minute, no. And mm-hmm. here's the fun things that really get you to think about it. Like there's a little meme,
mm-hmm.
and it shows the picture of might have even been a Road Runner. I can't remember the car. There we go. It was in 1969. We went to the moon. They show this beat up, dilapidated car, and then they show this amazing.
I really like that
hyper car down here.
Yeah.
I actually do too. That, to be fair, the car that they show that's all jacked up is probably worth $120,000 right now. I mean, it's old, but it's an old Road Runner.
Yeah.
But then they show this hyper car that probably goes to 300 miles an hour,
mm-hmm.
and they claim, how did we lose the technology when this is the advancements that we've had here on Earth?
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't believe it's the technology thing. I think it's just a direction that NASA took because, I'm not like an expert in this area for sure.
Well,
so
of course, me neither.
But all of the early space missions that were going towards landing on the moon, because I think it was Kennedy. I want to say that it was under Kennedy that we made this really big push. We had to beat the Russians,
right?
And we couldn't beat them into space. The Russians beat us there.
Was that old Sputnik?
They put Sputnik, orbiting around the Earth. That was kind of a embarrassment to the U.S. and their space program. But we pushed hard to get to the moon.
We were better at movies back then than they were.
Yeah.
But that's the claim, you know. But go ahead.
Yeah, and so we had these rockets that, and I don't even know the name of them. Ethan, maybe you can. Why don't you look up the history of the NASA space program, and we'll get it like a little bit of a timeline. But there are all these rockets that had the power and the ability to get way outside of Earth's orbit, all the way to the moon. Because we're talking, I don't know, 100,000 miles or something. I can't remember how far the moon is from the Earth, but I think it's like a couple 100,000 miles. And low Earth orbit is only a few miles, from the surface. And they were pushing these rockets, and they had the ability to get that far. And then they switched into this because it was very, very costly.
Sure.
They switched over to the shuttle program. In the shuttle program, there wasn't enough there to get us outside of the range of this low Earth orbit. And we started developing International Space Station. But that shuttle cut the cost of space travel.
Right,
because you could use the same thing over and over again, and
but it didn't have the technology to get to the moon.
But it didn't
land.
have exactly. It didn't have, And yeah, exactly. It didn't have the technology, but it wasn't because they couldn't develop the technology to get there again. It was just because their mission had changed. Their mission was to run experiments in zero gravity and to start developing this International Space Station.
I also think that the possible issue is that they didn't get the permits through the aliens because it's a hollow moon to be allowed to fly into their area and use their landing strips. Because that's the other claim, is that there's aliens on board, and that there's video of. I have seen some compelling video of off to the side. I mean, this is like me looking through my what the hell are those called? I was going to say a microscope, but that's not it.
Yeah,
a telescope. Excuse me. And you could see some movement off around the side of the moon, all this stuff. But they even show a spaceship that actually is flying inside the crater, and it opens up and lets it in. It could happen.
Isn't this a James Bond movie? Is that?
Well, not. It's one that's coming up in about 10 to 15 years.
That's so funny.
But there's so many. I can't even touch on all of them. But it's a lot of people talk about it. And to be fair, and I might not be pointing all of them out because I see so many of them that will make you step back and wait a minute, maybe look about that one. Not the spaceship one, or but some of them, like the possibility of them losing the technology, or if they claim that it's too costly. That kind of floors me because, to ever try it again, that kind of floors me because we blow money left and right.
We do.
You would think that they would be testing that on how to land on Mars.
So here's an interesting one. I was watching a program. It's called Space Camp, and it's a really, really cool documentary. It's about these kids that go to space camp, and they're learning all of this stuff as a potential of getting this next generation excited about going to Mars. And some different famous people, scientists came on, and they were talking about the budget at the time of, I want to say it's like the Gemini program. Ethan, maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, but they were talking about the budget for NASA was at 4% of our national budget. 4%.
That's extensive.
That's massive. Now, of course, our budget's quite a bit bigger now, but they're saying that I think now, at least in like 2016 or something, the budget was 0.4%.
Is that right?
So that's a significant change.
But we're not even we're barely trying to get out of the atmosphere. You know what I mean?
Well, here's the other thing.
If anybody wants to get past it, it's personally funded, in a sense. Privately funded.
Yeah. So they were talking about the once the shuttle program, died off, and the United States, and I think this was under Barack Obama, said, instead of us developing our own rockets, we are going to try and get private industry to compete for the funding to get us into space and to do these things. And what turned out is SpaceX.
Yep, there's not plenty, but enough people to go, I'm on board.
Yeah. Well, and you think about Elon Musk and how successful he's been with SpaceX. I mean, you've seen these, these rockets take off, and then, the leftover rockets land on a drone barge out in the middle of the ocean.
It is beyond impressive.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
In fact, I was watching a little video of it, and my daughter, she was like, watching her own little YouTube thing. We were sitting at the dining room table, and I was watching this thing on our TV, and she looks up and she sees this thing, and she's like, Dad, what is that? And I was that same way when I saw it the first time. It's an incredible feat to see a rocket take off, with a, spacecraft, split off, and then fall back to Earth, and then land upright
because
on a
doing
barge.
What only you've seen in movies for 40, 50, 60 years. So, that's how it's supposed to have worked.
Yeah.
But never has.
Yeah.
We have parachutes. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And or just debris.
Yeah. So, really, it's quite the accomplishment. But Elon Musk has actually reduced the cost of space flight by what he's doing right now. I mean, he really the costliest part is to put these rockets together, right, and then use them one time. They were comparing it to like if you were flying a commercial airline or something, and that airline had to be destroyed after the first
flight. You have to replace the wings every time.
Yeah,
engines are toast.
No, the whole thing would have to be replaced.
True. That's true.
And that would cost millions of dollars for a passenger to travel anywhere. But because you can just land it, refuel it, and off you go again, you can get the cost of flight much, much lower. And, in our space program, that's really been the crux of it is the cost.
Because it's astronomical.
Yeah. And, well, that's a good one, Dave.
Pun was intended.
So you think about getting to the moon. Ethan, look up how far the moon is from the Earth. I want to say it was like a couple 100,000 miles.
Dude, politicians, I saw that, what was that, 22 point something $billion? What was that for?
Oh, for the budget?
For the budget?
Fiscal year
Politicians do cocaine that exceeds that amount. We could do it again.
Their drug habits are
they
much
are. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, so the moon's distance from the Earth is 240,000 miles. Okay, now, also look up low Earth orbit. How many miles away from the Earth surface is that? Because we're talking about a significant distance past our current, what our current goals have been. But Elon Musk, I mean, he's talking about this big old starship. So the moon, low Earth orbit is 1,200 miles. That's pretty big difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Elon Musk is talking about his, his big, on his Falcon Heavy rocket and going to Mars, and that's how many miles away?
Oh my!
Mars is. I mean, it takes us. I think
8 months.
I think it's between 6 and 8, depending on at what point Mars is.
Oh, it's only 175 million miles away.
Only.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Yeah, but I mean, the difference in distance to get to these things is pretty significant, and of course they have to do. The partial orbits around these different celestial bodies in order to use their gravity to get them farther. Because in space, there's no, you can't just set off a rocket per se in space, because in order to propel yourself in that pretty much zero gravity, you have to expel something from the rocket. It's I think they're coming up with some other really cool technologies to get.
It works out.
Yeah,
I hope when they reach those planets, it does what they're supposed to do.
Yeah,
because it's bizarre that people know so much about things that are out there, and I know they have a lot of good guesses. Here's something I'm going to ask, and this is I don't know if it's a flat Earth thing. This is a Dave thing. I'm curious about this. I don't remember how fast we're moving. I looked at this up a while ago, and we're hauling butt around the sun very fast. And the sun and we're hauling through space, right? Very, very fast. We're hauling through space.
Yeah.
So I don't know how long really the pyramids were there. I'm just using them as a quick example. But they've been around a long damn time, right? Well, they claim, at least they have been set to the stars of the alignment of where they have built them. And also people that traveled the seas back in the day utilized the stars for navigation. And if we're traveling and we're outside of their solar systems and stuff, if we're traveling so damn fast after thousands of years, why are they still in the exact same place? And who's to say that they're not traveling in a different direction, because they're traveling. We're all traveling. And, so I know there's this time stuff, and it's just kind of weird that how when we're all moving, but yet there's things that we could that are always there no matter what. Yeah.
So this would be my guess. We're talking starlight, which is, travels at the speed of light.
That's pretty,
And in some cases, some of those stars don't even exist anymore.
Right, that's what they say.
Because they've already, I guess turned into supernova or whatever and blown apart.
And we just haven't seen the end of the light yet.
And we haven't seen the end of that light yet. We have some pretty amazing telescopes to look into deep space, and you can see there are, we are currently capturing, the explosions of some of these different stars. I don't know enough about all of those different stars as far as navigation and stuff. I think that there is, because if you think about it, and you were talking about earlier, which is, we're moving around the sun. We're also, there's a precession to our planet. So we're, which causes our seasons. And and then our solar system is within the Milky Way galaxy, right?
And we're all traveling.
Yeah, and everything is moving. Yeah. So
even at that, because if the light is here, and even if it's still the same stream that it's cut off, regardless, and we're still seeing it, we're still going this way. You would think it would be a fraction off. I'm telling you, the pyramids are still lined up to it today.
Well, but I want to say that the pyramids are lined up to it at certain times of the evening or whatever. It's not like it's static.
That's because we rotate.
Yeah,
but what I'm saying is you would think that it would eventually be off.
Yeah.
But when is that going to be? And when we're traveling 400,000 miles an hour, whatever the hell it is.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's just some odd things that's what we've utilized to travel through the world, and they're all there. They're all still there. Which ones have gone out?
I can't remember.
Imagine a couple of them have gone out by now. Disappeared.
Who's the I can't remember the guy's full name, but Hubble. He studied all of this stuff. And, of course, we named a telescope after him. And there's been other folks that are studying the stars. I mean, they track the movements of the stars. That's how, in some cases, they figure out whether something is a planet or not, because they can see it moving. And so they'll track different positions in space. Now, as far as, navigation, I'm sure that we're talking really, really bright stars, which would be equivalent to, like, our sun or, a sun.
Our sun's tiny compared to the rest of them, it seems like.
Yeah.
That's from what I hear.
Yeah.
Assuming they know.
And anyway, so they spend a lot of time tracking to see if things move, because that gives them some data to see, well, what is our speed with relative to these other things. So it's not like things have stayed in the same position, but
like you think the North Star would be a little bit northeast at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying after like a year that goes by going, I'm making this up. I know it's hundred thousands of miles an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, of us going in I imagine, a certain direction. And when are we going to hit something too? But anyways,
or maybe we have.
Yeah, no, that's possible.
I mean, where'd the dinosaurs go?
Well, I was going to say maybe there was a big bang that happened from that. I don't know. But, it's just weird to me that we're not going slow. Maybe it's slow in the whole existence of space. But when anything's moving, it doesn't stay put. It doesn't, whether we're rotating, doesn't come back around. That's realign itself.
Yeah.
After so long, it's kind of weird.
Ethan, see if you can figure out who discovered that the universe is still expanding. Because this is one of the ways that they figured it out.
Let me ask you this:
by tracking.
If the universe is expanding, what is it expanding into?
Oh gosh, Dave, you're gonna push my brain too far here.
Well, that's pretty sad if I could push anybody's brain. But that's my point. Is what the hell? And then what are there stars that get created in between that when the space, expands? Does nothing expand to it like these stars? They don't multiply.
Space. Yeah, more open space. Well, I guess it maybe. I mean, you get some major explosion of some star, and you get enough debris and energy that maybe that.
But you would almost think that the space would have to hit something to make that happen, not expand from nothing. Well, expand nothingness into nothingness to make it more.
There's steam coming out of your head right now, Dave. Your brain is going overtime.
It's I know some people's like, you really don't want to know the answer. It's going to be too much for it. But it'd be really cool to really know what it is, and that's why steam will do. When I grab the knee pads when I'm going up to do some work, when I go to put them on, which one's left, which one's right, that creates steam. To be fair, out of my head. Okay, I get confused over even that. But
that's funny.
But I get confused of what's going on in our own planet. So when I think about that, and people that tell us what it is, I call BS on so much of it, because all they're, in my opinion, which is probably right, is that they're just giving their best guesses. And they could be right. I'm not saying they can't be right, but I'm also saying they could be wrong too. But you don't even know what the hell's going on underneath our feet. And you're telling me what's going on farther than any life. You can't even live long enough to get to that, especially with the technology you have to get there to even say, hey, I was right.
Yeah. So
it is doing this.
I think I don't claim to be an expert. I'm very fascinated by this stuff. I can tell you've got a major curiosity here.
Sure.
For me, I try and listen to as many different opinions of it. I love watching these documentaries. This Space Camp one that I was watching, very, very fascinating. Some things I was like, it doesn't quite make sense to me, but I just, I take it with a grain of salt, and I keep on exploring and trying to learn a little bit more about it. Ethan had a thing on here. Edwin Hubble was the guy. So,
Edwin.
Yeah, he was the guy who, with some other scientists, discovered that things are still expanding. But anyway, but the thing is that I don't know enough. You had made a point about how in the world do folks even know what a planet is made out of? How do they know what the core is? And I go, I don't really know. I know they're the very basics of how they sort of think that there are certain components or materials within a planet, even our moon. There are so many different. I mean, you work in an industry where you use high-tech equipment to measure things, and in science, especially with NASA, they've developed so many different instruments to measure different things, chemical compounds. They talk about the Mars rovers and the stuff that they're picking up out of the ground or drilling, but
they're actually there now.
Well, but I'm just saying that the sensors that they develop, that's just one example of some of the sensors. But there's also sensors. Some of these telescopes have all of these different abilities to check different types of radio frequencies, the light. They listen. I mean, there's so many other technologies that would be considered like sensors, and they can make some certain assumptions about a planet based on what different sensors are coming back with. And I don't know all of it for sure, but I just know that there's technology that exists that gives us a little bit of a clue. Now, does that mean that it's definitive, made of whatever material? Well, I don't think so.
I know it. like they don't point it inward and look and see what we have. Like they could tell, and I'm not saying that it is or isn't, okay?
Yeah.
How would I know?
Yeah.
So, but Jupiter's a big ball of gas apparently, and people are like, can you fly through Jupiter if it was a ball of gas? What would have happened if you lit it with a match, And I'm like, and they happen to know what gas it is too. I'm like, what?
Yeah, how do you know? Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to play along. I really would, but I'm a person that really would. I like facts an awful lot, And so I would be like, I get that you have a something that senses something, but when you're that far off, how do you really tell what it is that you're really looking at? Like what was it that we were talking about this morning about? What was it, Mercury?
Yeah,
and it's encrusted with diamonds, and it's like
it's made of enough pure carbon that an impact should create enough pressure to create diamonds. That was the rumor that I heard.
Yeah, and I was like, well, that's really cool, but I want to challenge you.
How do you really know?
What's 20 miles underneath our? I mean, just a sliver underneath our own.
Yeah.
So I know you could guesstimate. I know we've talked about it before, so I'm not trying to get it all into it again, but you can't really tell me if what the really core of, you could give me a good hypothesis, and you could be right about what the core of our planet is, but you can't really tell me for sure because nobody's been there. I mean, I've seen a couple movies.
I think a way that they do it is they kind of create, some sort of hypothesis. They kind of guess what they think it is, and then they go out and they try and test that. And if they find data that would negate that, then they got to reformulate their hypothesis. So it's not like they have all of this data that confirms it 100%, but in many cases they don't have enough data to confirm that it's not that way.
Yeah, but they still teach it like it's real.
Sure.
That's the unfortunate thing is.
Oh, sure.
So, yeah. But that's the when everything's open. In my opinion, is everything's open ended. No, there's hardly anything. The deeper you go in curiosity, it's more open-ended.
Yeah,
I'm glad that they have the ideas, because if we don't, we can't even broaden our minds to what it could even be, So I love that, the moon was cheese at one point, but it got us thinking, and so I appreciate that. But man, I cannot sit there and go, and let's just say teach my kid because I know what it is. I could go out there and tell you what my driveway's made of, because I could go touch it.
Yeah. Okay, so here's an interesting one. So we had early on, we had a podcast where we were kind of talking about Mars, and we, as a civilization, had a lot of assumptions about what Mars was made out of, what the planet looked like, if there was any civilizations once there, or any of those things. And so there's a whole bunch of hypotheses created to kind of guess, well, what could it be? And then they started doing these different flyovers, and they gathered more and more data. And then eventually we landed rovers on there to actually test. And turns out that we were right about a lot of stuff. Yeah. And how did they come up with these things originally? What sensors were used? Were they just looking through a telescope, or were there other things, other ways of gathering information? And of course, I don't know enough about it to say what those things were, but they're confirming.
No, I get impressed by the things that have been confirmed because of how they do it. But, really, truly, and I can understand seeing things on the surface. I get that to a point.
Yeah.
But, man, you tell me that they know like Venus or Uranus. I'm going to get that right. I don't want you to have to bleep anything out and I screw up and say Uranus or anything like that.
I stopped bleeping your stuff out a long time ago.
Well, you don't have that kind of time. So, but to tell me the 47 layers it's like, come on. You threw in 6 of those layers just in case.
Well, so some of the things, and again, I don't know a lot about this, but in some cases, you can see the results of some activity. Like, for instance, you can see if there's a volcano and what potentially it is erupting. And they can make some assumptions based on prior information, what would cause a volcano to be created, erupt, and what the results might be. And so you can make some assumptions on another planet based on information that we know about our own. And, I want to say... I can't remember which planet it was recently. I can't remember. Anyway, it was on this it was on the Space Camp documentary, and they were talking about the early photos, and I want to say maybe it was Mars. I can't even remember. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think that it was from the 2 probes that were sent out, and I can't remember their names now.
Probe 1 and Probe 2.
Well, that's people on the podcast are going, oh, it's this. And I'm going, I don't know. Producer Ethan, look it up. There's two probes that were sent out. And
you're talking about to Mars?
And one of them has, or maybe even both of them, have actually exited our solar system now. And I can't remember the name of them, but it's not Mars, Ethan. These are...
Oh, they just did flybys.
Yeah.
I remember, sure.
And there was a Star Trek movie that was based on one of these things being turning into some intelligent life.
I wonder where Elon's car is at this point.
Yeah, I think it was like Voyager. Yeah, I think it was Voyager, Ethan. That's what I'm guessing, is it's Voyager 1, Voyager 2. Anyway, these things, they took pictures at different times of some planets, and I don't know if it was Mars, but they saw 2 different perspectives, and it showed volcanic activity. Like, they saw plumes of things being, pushed up through the surface of the planet. And I just thought that's kind of an interesting thing, because just seeing that, you can start making some assumptions about what the surface might be like, or below the surface might be like, because you think about like how plate tectonics start to push and create hot magma, and
by the similarities of our own planet.
Yeah. And so again, I don't know the details of all this stuff, but these little nuggets then gets my brain thinking about how is it possible that they can get all this other information and claim it to be this way.
I mean, I get that they're smart. I know that they split atoms and stuff before. I get it. But it's a little bit too much for me to jump on board every single time they say that they've found a planet and they think it's another Earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
How do they really know?
You're jumping to a whole lot of conclusions. And
but this is where I go. I see those things, and I want to hear, how do they know that? And
I want to know more.
Rarely, how they very rarely ever put the details of how they believe these things to be true.
And there's probably a reason, because if it really was, it would be front and center. It would be talked more about, not just you and I essentially just questioning it.
Dave, let's take a quick break. I want to talk a little bit more about like human space travel. Like the potential of maybe in our lifetime.
Oh, all right. Sounds good.
Sound good? Okay, We'll be right back. Dave and I appreciate you listening to the show. Please take a moment and write a review on Apple Podcast or podchaser.com. And since Spotify doesn't currently have reviews, simply telling your friends about the show would be great too. Also, you can always reach out to us at our website, nevertooserious.com, or via our socials at the NTS Podcast. And seriously, from the bottom of our hearts, thanks again for listening to the show. All right, we are back.
Yes, we are. So hold on. You want to talk about human beings now?
I do.
So we know that people have kind of reached into outer space a little bit with these travels that they've done. And that's some big leaps and bounds. So you're talking about like essentially doing what Elon wants to do.
Yeah.
All right, what you got?
Well, William Shatner, my dear mother, she's in the audience today talking about space stuff, and she was talking about, didn't William Shatner? Yeah, he did. Blue Origin took him up. So Captain Kirk actually made it into space.
Yep.
Which is a pretty cool thing, because I want to say he was like in his upper 80s or maybe 90s.
Yeah, he's an old SOB.
Yeah,
and cool as hell, I will tell you. William Shatner's a cool dude.
Yeah, but him being such an old guy, normally under our history of space travel, you would need someone who has a certain physical capabilities.
Fit as hell, gone through all of these tests. You remember the zero gravity tests and the G-force tests, and you have to have these certain suits to keep your bones and body and stuff to stay put. I mean, and you could send up any fat dude you want up there. Yeah. William Shatner is not in a great shape. And again, he said I think he is like 90, if not close to it. So it's a big deal that anybody could just, if you want to go, just go.
Yeah, have the money or the support from some rich person. There he is, 90 years old, William Shatner.
And he looks fantastic.
He's pretty good shape for a 90-year-old. But that still being said, the technology that we have to send people into space is improving to the point where it doesn't require someone who used to be a fighter pilot, or have, some crazy physical capabilities, or be a scientific mind.
And you could even unbuckle when you get up there and check stuff out.
Yeah.
So I agree. You could,
and I think
wouldn't take much to go the next distance.
Well, I think this is partly in that we have these commercial capabilities, these private companies that are now like SpaceX and Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic. These are companies now that have the capability of doing what they want to do. I'm not sure how much the FAA has in regulatory power over doing these sort of things. But just seeing that normal people, normal in quotes, rich people, have the ability to get into space, that's a pretty significant step forward.
At this point, this should be a different boundaries of the FAA. Like, dude, you don't have any say over here.
Yeah, once you get out of low Earth orbit.
Yeah, who the hell are you guys?
Yeah.
We're doing stuff beyond your ability.
Yeah,
so we're just going to take... You can't, with the FAA, good luck taking leaps and bounds.
Yeah, we're going to answer to Xenu from now on.
That's right.
Even look up, there's a SpaceX documentary that came out recently, and they took up So, they took up a whole bunch of people that were just like private citizens, and one of them was like a cancer patient survivor. It turned out to be this big fundraiser. They did like matching funds and some other things.
It must have been a big fundraiser because it's spendy.
Yeah. And Elon Musk, he was a big part of being able to make this thing happen. And they only got out far enough to orbit the planet. But all of the plans are to create this opportunity for normal people to then go to Mars. And there's a lot of problems with that kind of distance, because I think, didn't we say 6 to 8 months to be able to get to Mars?
Yep.
And all of the issues of not only getting off our planet, but then landing on the other planet
successfully.
Yeah, and then
getting off of the ship and doing something else,
or even getting off of that planet
because it's outrageously cold, isn't it?
I think it is outrageously cold. It's not like a cold Arizona desert. It's far worse.
Yeah. It's like it's like Minnesota. You're fine. You could live.
It's like Minnesota. Yeah, if it were red. Yeah, I think that the amount of fuel that it takes just to get off our planet is enormous, and then you have to slingshot around. I don't know if it's our moon that they would use some sort of gravitational slingshot then to get to Mars, and Mars has to be. I want to say it's like every 20-something months is within a close enough range to make it a 6 to 8 month journey to the planet. So it's not like you can just turn around and come back and decide, I decided I changed my mind. You gotta be fully committed. But to travel 6 months in a space shuttle or a spaceship or something,
and it's not like what
does that look like?
Right. It would be one thing if it was like the Starship Enterprise. You go down to the dining room. You have all your. It's like a Love Boat.
They had a nice like bar down there,
right? But no, this is going to be a tiny capsule that people are going to. Yeah, I've seen some space movies where people start going nutty and start killing off half the crew. There's like 2 people left to get to the planet, and they hate each other, trying to off each other, and they're both probably 2 dudes. So it's not like they could even repopulate the planet. They'll try though, but it's like it'd be scary. It's so weird because I know we've talked about it, and I would love to be able to go do something like that, but I don't want to go there knowingly to die. I would want a good plan.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I want to be on this first ship. Because somebody's going to go, oh, red wire goes to the red wire, blue wire. Oh, I screwed that one up. There's going to be a hiccup.
Yeah. Well, I think
can't be perfect.
For the first few flights, they've got to have some expertise. They got to be able to troubleshoot and fix issues
But one of the first 20 people on the planet, you'd be always, high society there, right? If you're like the 8th and 20th or 300th, you're just another peon.
Yeah.
You're not like established member of Mars.
I think they would have to send like supply ships to Mars ahead of time. Make sure that they can get there, land, and be available for whoever takes that first flight to Mars, because there are no resources on Mars. I mean, there's nothing. And that planet doesn't have the protections like Earth has. There's no magnetic field. You're getting solar rays like crazy.
Let me ask you, because we may have talked about this, so sorry if we're being redundant here, but why Mars then? Why do people want Mars? Is it because it's within reach?
It's the most Earth-like planet within reach.
Earth-like, but there's nothing there. It's like Earth. If we had like a nuclear holocaust, and and 100 years go by and nothing has ever grown. I mean, it's
like the
Arizona desert.
Yeah, and all that radiation absolutely is there. There's not really any atmosphere to speak of, but you can see that is very Earth-like. The temperatures are extreme. The weather in like the windstorms and stuff can be really extreme. Right. There's not a lot of protection from space junk falling, down onto the planet. There's not much protection from the solar, the solar radiation that's hitting the planet, and there's no natural resources that can be utilized at this point. Now, they do say that they have ice water at the poles, so I don't know if that means that would be an area that they would want to try and land, or they just provide their own resources with, whatever, with, loading the planet with other resources. But
I'm shocked they haven't tried to send a couple nukes over there to thaw it out.
Well, I think Elon Musk had talked about, what would it take to terraform the planet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think
we might have talked about that.
We did talk about you have to send up nuclear bombs one after another for years in order to provide enough the potential to create an atmosphere.
And then you want to go land there and die in 3 months because of all the radiation.
All the radiation. I'm not sure which would be worse, the nuclear fallout radiation or the sun radiation.
It's like, I made it, Ma! Oh.
Well, we had
3 days later.
We talked about 3D printing a long time ago and how the technology is improving well enough to do 3D printed houses.
Yeah.
So you could probably create, some sort of device that is large enough to then create on its own autonomously these structures to house your
and there's a
Martians.
lot of Earth there to do that, but you need a ton of water to probably make that happen.
Well, yeah, I don't know what materials that they would use, but there's got to be something. There has to be some liquid.
What they need to do is, maybe they already are trying to genetically modify us so we could go there and not have to utilize some of this stuff. See, we'd be better off. It might be easier to genetically modify. I think China's working on it.
They probably are. Well, because they want to get to Mars too.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. Want to mess with our crap.
Yeah. Well, they've sent some stuff over there. Yeah.
They probably sent the coronavirus over there too, just to piss everybody off that gets there.
Well, the idea that we could send people there fascinates me. To think about how you could actually make that happen. I really think the supply thing would be really important. Using the technology that we have right now to create stuff without us being there.
Well, you've seen those robotic dog-looking things, right? And those, they can launch a ton of those out there to help support you and doing the things you got to do, and get you around. But just having the any country, be honest with you, that has rovers over there is impressive enough as it is. And if you could have a rover over there, they can send one of us over there.
I'm curious about how advanced those I think the Boston Dynamics, those robots are at doing different things. One of the issues that we run into with Mars is just it's so far away. It takes, I want to say it's like a 20-minute round trip to communicate. Like all those rovers that we have, we pre-program them and they send back stuff to us and then we program them again. And I want to say that they even have like test robots here that they test out the programs with before they send them to the rovers officially to then accomplish their missions.
The whole situation that I talked about earlier about, did we even go to the moon?
Yeah.
Well, they have video of, and they took a picture of all these Mars pictures that we got from the rover. And then they also took a picture of all these space people with, out there in Arizona flats. And it looks exactly the same. Yeah. And, that's all it takes is this picture and that picture. And they're like, wait a minute. They're trying to pull a fast one like they did with the moon.
Yeah.
It's probably the same people, but it is so out there. It really is. And it's so hard to believe or understand. Not even necessarily believe, but it's so hard to understand that it's almost easier to make up some other parallel that is happening because it's beyond our understanding.
Yeah.
And I could get that. And there are far smarter people out there than even some of the smartest people that we know that could understand things and create paths to, sorry to say it again, but better understanding of what goes on. So I do know that just because I can't grasp it doesn't mean it's not real or exist. But, I do know that most of the things that we talk about or we see or we teach, and I do mean probably most, they are mostly hypotheses that have not been 100%, maybe very close.
We may not even get to 100%.
Right. And so I take that as, which allows me to have a little bit of fun with some of these topics because it's not even that the fun of that they could be wrong. It's where it goes from there. It makes it very interesting and how crazy because,
doesn't it make you, though, want to learn more about it, to understand those little things?
That's why I'm kind of appreciative.
Yeah.
I appreciate the people that have their hypothesis, and believe it or not, these crazy flat earthers, it gives me something to think about. Like, why is the water, here's another one, why is the water around it when it's actually flat, I know there's gravity and stuff. Or why does the sun reflect off the water this direction, not in an arc, if you will? I'm like,
There's a series called Cosmos. There's two series.
You've talked about that a few times.
Yeah. One of them, Carl Sagan, he was the person who did the first presentation, and then Neil deGrasse Tyson did the second one. And the second one, more modern, the CGI in it is fantastic. It really gives you a pretty good picture of what they're trying to explain to you. Sometimes it's hard to, watch some of the old stuff, and, the animation is kind of ugly, and it doesn't, it might make you more curious, but it doesn't really answer questions for you. In this one, I think they do such a fantastic job of trying to illustrate the concepts that they're talking about. Because, there are scientists who, this is their entire life. They've dedicated everything to it. And we're out here, we do our day job, we do the podcast, it's like, we're not dedicating much.
In 3 minutes, I'm like, you're full of shit. You don't know nothing. It's like, you don't know what I put into this.
Yeah, exactly. So, and so I don't want to try and, I don't want to make it sound like I know more than them, because it's obviously not true.
And I agree with that.
But watching the Cosmos series, it sparks the interest, the curiosity that you have right now. You're going to be even more curious if you watch that series. It's quite a few different segments. I don't even know how many. I have it on DVD, believe it or not. But they have had it streaming on Netflix for a while, and they had it in some other places. And but it's so fascinating because it really does kind of answer some of those questions that I've kind of go, well, that doesn't make much sense to me. And then they explain it a different way, and it's like, oh, okay, well that kind of takes care of that. But then it always creates those additional questions. Okay, well, if that is the case, then how does this fit into it? My let's see, great uncle Edmund Halley, he hung out with folks like Newton, and he was a mathematician, and he was the first one to calculate the return of Halley's Comet. At the time, it wasn't called Halley's Comet. It was something else. But eventually, they named the comet after him. And yes, it is pronounced Halley, not Haley.
And now we got to dig into that BS.
But in Cosmos, he's featured in it. And so you get to, and it's really about Newton, and he's like a side character in there, because Newton was brilliant, and so Edmund Halley was working through these different mathematical equations, trying to figure out, some of the stuff that Newton just like quickly figured out and created all this mathematics to support
everybody's
it.
The same, but everybody's different. You buy a box of lights, right? And I got put them in all the lamps around here. Mm-hmm. And I can sit here. I'm not saying that this is how they got smarter. Sit there and start tapping on them, pink, 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 and one of them will get a little bit brighter than the other. And some of those light bulbs will be a little brighter.
Some of them a little bit dimmer.
Might have to smack them around a little bit, but they do. But they think differently. And thank God we're not all the same.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah. Well, and it's such a weird time.
There's some dumb people out there.
Like way back in the day, science was really, it was kind of like frowned upon by the religious establishment at the time, because they felt like it was a challenge to their theology. And so a lot of these scientists couldn't come out and say certain things for fear of getting in trouble, backlash from the religious institutions.
And most of those people are religious too. So like it would be backlash from their family and friends and peers.
Yeah, but as you kind of go through time, we're now in a place where we have so many scientists who are studying so many different things, and you don't have that same pressure. And so you're starting to see discoveries that are contrary to old belief systems, and that then sparks on those additional questions. Right. And that's why I think today is some of the best days to be interested in any of this scientific stuff.
Right. Instead of sitting there and just people don't even pay attention to an example as a light bulb, mm-hmm. or how it got here, or what it does, or what it takes to achieve light in your house. Yeah. It's a big damn deal that we could go in here and flip a switch and light up the place. Yeah. But nobody cares. Yeah. But it takes some special people, the brighter bulbs in the box, to be able to go, wait a minute, how and why? Mm-hmm. Because even if there's something that's created doubt, and even if they dig in and find out that it's still true, but they've enlightened themselves and energized themselves to look past it and maybe even create something else new that goes along with what they're looking at. So that's why I don't like everything to be so definitive when we all know it's open-ended. You could be really close to exactly accurate. What if there's one more layer? What if they have example is the whole Earth? They have the whole, levels or layers of the Earth all the way down to the core. What if there's one more layer in the core they didn't think about?
Yeah.
And so I hate closing the door on anything because I want somebody to still think about it.
Yeah.
Fine tune what everybody's thoughts are because we're all capable of misinterpreting
But I think that's the beauty of the scientific method is that you constantly have discovery. Once you find something that seems pretty solid, other people want to disprove it,
challenge it, absolutely.
And sometimes that challenge doesn't really succeed until many, many years down the road when maybe certain scientific instruments have been created to then prove whether something was right or wrong. I was talking to your daughter a few days back, and I said, "Yeah, we're gonna talk about." She was asking about the podcast, and I said, "Yeah, we're gonna talk about some space stuff." And so I said, I was talking to her and my daughter. I'm like, "So, is this a topic that you're interested in?" And Brooklyn rolls her eyes. Nope, she's not interested. And your daughter wasn't interested either. And so I was like, why is it that we have a generation of kids right now that are totally not interested in space? Because when I was a kid...
They don't care that we're literally a rock on it, hauling balls through the space. That's amazing.
It is amazing. But when I was a kid, I was fascinated by space. We were, the space shuttle was a big deal.
Right.
Going to the moon was a big deal. The astronauts were heroes. It was
a time that brought everybody together in the country too.
And now we have access to watching the flights of SpaceX,
and
their
kids
launches,
are
and they're not even paying attention.
It's not exciting enough.
There is like a small segment, I think, that are nerdy enough to be fascinated by it and pursue it. The Space Camp documentary showed, a bunch of kids that were really fast. I mean, this is what they wanted their life to be like, is pursuing this this thing. But in general, even at I do track practice with high school age kids. They're not interested in either. They're far more interested in whatever social media is doing, or
can you buy me some beer?
Yeah, the shoulder tap.
I don't know if they're still doing that. I don't know if that's a big deal to them anymore either.
Yeah, but they're not necessarily fascinated about it either. And I think in order for us to get to some other planet like Mars, there has to be an excitement in these generations that want to pursue that, because it's not something that you could just spend 4 years in college and suddenly this is what you do. There's so much more discovery and so much more planning and building, engineering of things. We have to have these younger generations be excited about it and then pursue it with many, many years.
Well, exactly. So going to the moon was a huge deal to our country, and if I could even dare say the world. But they haven't gone back for so many years, and I thought, regardless of the money, because we blow money on everything, so who cares about the cost of it? But to be able to do that again, and we would learn every time we would go back. You would think it would be easier the second time and cheaper the second time, But the only time anybody got piqued their interest again was Mars, and that still isn't even enough to get people crazy.
Yeah,
only a select bunch, but still you would think that everybody would stop for a minute and go, wait a minute,
how long
we landed a robot on Mars and we are communicating with that robot? That doesn't freak people out in a positive way, or anyway. Be honest with you, that's a huge feat, people.
Yeah. Do you think we're gonna have humans on Mars in our lifetime?
In my lifetime, I won't. I'll say your lifetime. Yeah, probably in your lifetime. I don't know if I want to live that long.
You're going to be around.
But I would say in 20 years, because Elon, I have to go with Elon. I don't think anybody's going to catch up with him and surpass him. I think he's ahead of the game in all this. But regardless, I feel that in my life, I'm going to at least see somebody attempt to get a crew and say, we're heading there.
Yeah.
So, because every day with technology, you come out with a cell phone. Just a couple more years, now you have a freaking smartphone. And then a couple more, it just, the technology quadruples itself the next step. It doesn't and I'm probably underselling it. It doesn't just double what it can do. It goes beyond. So I think that whatever's in the works, we don't even know about it. You know?
My guess is that in our lifetime there's going to be humans on Mars. I think Elon with his boring tunneling company, I think that technology has actually, I don't even know if it's been talked about, but I think that technology could be used on Mars.
Absolutely.
So
here's this too, and I believe it's true. Again, I don't care if it is or isn't. So I'm talking about all kinds of stuff today.
Mm-hmm.
That there has been a patent from the U.S. in 2016. They issued to get a patent, and they actually got it in 2018. What's that called? When they were issued the patent on a spaceship, a UFO.
Mm-hmm.
And they talked about
a design.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
And they talked about how it works and all this stuff. And there's actually a patent out there.
Interesting.
And so again, you and I've also discussed that whatever we see might be just the tip of the iceberg. Whatever we see, there's probably something else crazy going on. And we've seen some UFOs that do exist.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know whose they are. And I personally believe they're of this earth. So somebody's out there doing some shit.
Yeah.
And we don't know what's really capable. I saw this new thing. I don't think it's really for real yet, but it's a different way to get rockets into space. And they literally do, picture this, you're a track guy. The way they do discus, the way they do shot put,
mm-hmm.
they don't just go up there and huck it like a Frisbee. Mm-hmm. They circle, spin, and
mm-hmm.
give it momentum. Well, that's what they're doing
mm-hmm.
with these rockets and spinning around really fast and launch them way up in the air.
Interesting.
And then they will ignite and take off from there. But they're doing leaps and bounds of technology.
It's like Virgin Galactic. They
mm-hmm.
fly up there with a plane and then they launch from I don't know how many 1,000 feet above the Earth. They fire off and take off the rest of the way. But it's such an interesting topic. Anything else you want to add before we close out?
Boy, there's too much, Scott. We can't do it all in an hour.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Maybe we can watch some of the Cosmos stuff, and we'll talk about maybe some other scientific things.
Because there's so many things out there that people talk about, and so much of it is BS.
Yeah.
But it's still intriguing BS, and I like to talk about it because within that whole bucket of BS, there might be a couple of things in there that, they could be right about.
Okay, well, we're going to plan a adult beverage and cigar night, and we'll watch Cosmos, and we'll nerd out.
Let's just not don't push record on that one.
Our wives are going to divorce us.
So it shall be done.
Yeah.
It's a price we have to pay.
Yeah. All right, thanks for listening and watching. You can catch more of the show on any podcast platform that you prefer. Catch the video version on YouTube, Rumble, and on Spotify.
Yep.
More information on our website.
Never2serious.com.
And send us an email.
At mailbag@never2serious.com.
And until we see you next time, take care.
And be safe.